So now that we know how a basic camera system works, let's extend it just a little bit. So I say just a little bit because my demo here, the demo program here, I literally copy and pasted that previous program. It even still has the same namespace and everything like that, basic camera demo. And I just added a little bit more to it. I added a second player and a second camera. That's it. So how do we do this? So first off, let me show you what it looks like. Now here, I have two separate viewports. So on the top, I have Mario. On the bottom, I have Luigi. Now they're both controlled. I have Mario controlled by WASD, and I have Luigi controlled by IJKL. So if I move Mario, you'll see that his viewport moves. He's got his own camera. Simultaneously, I could move Luigi, and he has his own viewport. Now the thing is, I can still zoom in. I only have the zoom controls set up to Mario's viewport at this point, just because I don't know. That's what I did. Same with the rotation or whatnot, but I'm not going to rotate because it's just going to make us all sick. So we're going to move over, but the interesting thing is, once I get over far enough, you're going to see that these characters are in the exact same world. Each camera is looking at it independently. There they are. How's it going, Mario? So I'm moving Luigi. Mario's staying stationary, but you can see he's moving in both views. Now, it looks like he's moving faster in the top view, but he's not really. The reason why it looks like he's moving faster is because Mario, the top one, is zoomed in a little bit more because I did the zoom effect. So as I move, it looks like it's moving, it's covering a bigger distance, but it's really not. If I zoom back out, it's the opposite effect. Okay, so let's do the rotation just to weird everybody out here. Ugh. You notice that Luigi's does not rotate. Of course he doesn't. I'm never going to get this rotation back there. There we go. All right. So that's basically it. So now this is what we call a horizontal split screen. Now we can also do vertical split screens. Now what I've done in this demo is I've tried to make that as simple as possible. This black bar between the screens, that's not there automatically. I manually put that there, and I'll show you how I did that shortly. So if I want to change this to a vertical split screen, so right now it's on horizontal, I'm going to change this Boolean is vert split to true. I'm just going to rerun the program now. And now we have a vertical split. But it's really the same thing. So it depends on the type of game you're making. If you're making like a game like Tetris or something like that, each player is controlling their own Tetris area or something like that, this would be perfect for that kind of thing. And you notice that I'm now displaying both players' coordinates and data. Still displaying the time and everything like that. The HUD works the exact same way. But now that black bar that splits the screen, it's now going vertically. There's not much to that. It's just a basic if statement that's doing that magic. So let's go look at the differences between this camera system and the previous one. So obviously we have two cameras. So that means we had to basically duplicate everything we did for the first camera for the second camera. But there is some things that can be shared. So first up, you'll see that I now have two cameras. I called it P1 cam and P2 cam. I could have an array of cameras. Maybe you have like 4 players or something like that, and you want to split it 4 times. That's perfectly possible. What you need to realize, though, is you're literally rendering the world twice. So it's doing twice the amount of work than it would if you were just playing with a single view, which means it's using up that much more CPU. So you got to keep that in mind, okay? All right, so I've created these two cameras. The first new thing that we see is this, the viewports. Remember how I told you that frame is like a viewport? Now before, because we only had one viewport, we didn't actually have to do anything special. We just said, hey, we're going to use that one viewport that exists already, the default view. But now, because we have separate ones, we're actually going to have to modify this a little bit. So first up, I'm creating a viewport to store the starting viewport so I don't lose it. It's kind of like temporarily saving a variable so you can reuse that variable and bring the original data back in. That's kind of what we're doing here with the default view. Then I have separate viewports for each player. So this is like player 1's picture frame, and this is player 2's picture frame. And those two picture frames are at different points in the world. This Boolean is vert split. That's obviously new as well. And then down here, this is the exact same. I have a zoom for each camera, although I didn't actually implement the second zoom yet. And we have the zoom speed and the rotate speed. I didn't change these because that can be shared between the two. I don't have to do anything. I also didn't have to make a second world bounce. It's the same world. They exist in the same world. They're not two separate worlds that the players are on. They're sharing the world. Keyboards is the same. The screen dimensions are the same. The background imagery is the same. I had to duplicate some stuff here. So in terms of the fact that we have 2 players now, so I have 2 player images, 2 player rectangles, 2 player true positions, and 2 player screen locations. Okay. I kept the same move speed. Nothing changed there. I kept all the same HUD data. The only thing I added that was extra this time is I added a game rectangle for that black bar. Now, game rectangle is part of the helper library. So game rectangle is part of the helper library. So I had to include that library, add that reference to that library as well. All right, so don't forget to do that if you plan on doing something like this. You don't have to have that bar in there. It does look a lot worse without it. It's very difficult to see the difference or see where the two screens actually separate. And I'll show you that if I remember to do that while I'm making the video. Pardon me. Now we have this data is exactly the same as before, the mouse world location just for fun, and all the text locations. So you can see there wasn't really much difference so far. We added the viewports, we added this Boolean, and we duplicated a bunch of data for the camera and the image stuff. That's it. Okay. Well, what else is new? There's got to be something unique. Well, this is exactly the same. We didn't change a single thing here inside of the initialize. Inside of the load content, we have to set up some more stuff. So this is how we handle those viewports. So the first thing we do is we store the current view in that default view variable. Remember I told you it's kind of like that temporary variable where we store a value so we don't lose it. That's what we're doing there. We're storing that for now. Now we're setting P1 view and P2 view to that default view. So they look at the exact same thing for now. They're all looking at the same place. They're all basically looking at the world. Now this is where things shift. So I have this 2 different ways depending on whether I have a vertical split or a horizontal split. Let's just look at the vertical split first. So what I did was I said, hey, set the width of both views to half of their original width because I'm splitting it down the middle. So I only want them to be half as wide, right? I don't want them to be the full thing. Otherwise I won't be able to fit them on the screen. Whereas when I have a horizontal split, I'm saying, hey, make it half as high. So we're cutting it in half horizontally. Now back up in the vertical, I have to place the second player's view so it's not sitting on top of the first player's view. So what I did is I set the second player's view, its X location, equal to the width of the player 1 view, which is the right side of the player 1 camera. So I just set its starting location to the right side of player 1. So now they're sitting side by side. Whereas down below here for the horizontal split, I put the second player below the first player. So we set it to its height. So now it's underneath it. So depending on whether it's a vertical split or not, that's really the only change there. If I only wanted one of them, if I never wanted to do, say, for example, horizontal split, I would just delete that. Okay? Same stuff here for our background images and our HUD and everything like that. And here is the second time I'm using that isVert split, and the second and last time. So if I'm vertical, then I'm going to create that game rectangle to be a vertical line that goes up and down at the center of the screen. And if it is a horizontal split, then I'm creating a rectangle that goes from left to right at the center of the screen. That's the only difference there. So it happens automatically just based on that Boolean variable. Now down below, or did we change anything else? No, there's the background. The world bounds hasn't changed. The player's rectangle position hasn't changed. We did add the second player. Where did I put the second player? Well, the first player went 50 pixels from the left side of the world. So in this case, for the second player, I put it at 50 pixels from the right side of the world. So there's the right side of the world. I minus the 50, but because my character is a certain width, I'm also going to subtract the character's width, which in this case is 2 times their original width because I scaled everything, if you remember. And the rest of that is all the same. There's our text locations, and now you can see that I have 2 separate cameras. The only thing that changed here, was that each one is now pointing to their own personal viewport. Now before we just had it going directly to the graphics device, the graphics device.viewport. Now we're going to their own individual one. So they're saying, hey, draw mine, draw your own stuff. Okay. So not a lot of changes so far. We had to set up the viewports. We had to resize the viewports. We had to set up our splitter, our visual splitter for the center of the screen. And we had to load a second camera. Okay. Moving on. In update, nothing changes here. I left all the other stuff. Nothing there, nothing there. Nothing is changing. I added functionality for player 2 to move, which I just duplicated. I just duplicated and did it with IJKL instead of WASD. I guess I can get rid of this extra space here. I don't know why that's there. There we go. So this is me setting the draw position of the player 2, just like I did for player 1 there. And then this is just us retrieving the player's screen location from their world location. Again, just for view purposes. We're not actually doing anything with it. And here's the last big change. I think the last big change. We have to tell each of the cameras to look at their respective players. So the player 1 camera is always looking at player 1 rectangle. Player 2 camera is always looking at the player 2 rectangle. Okay. Draw. Now, this is the only other thing. You'll notice draw cam view is not changed in any way, shape, or form. I pass in a camera as a parameter. I set up the weird sprite batch using that camera. Whatever camera is passed in. Whatever. It might be player 1 camera, might be player 2 camera. It doesn't really matter because it's just taking any camera. And then the HUD has not changed at all either, with the exception that I also added in the splitter. Okay, and I put the splitter behind everything else just so those things show up on top of them because they're actual HUD elements. But if I didn't put this splitter in here and I run this, you'll see the difference. Immediately, you can't find the center of the screen anymore. You're like, you have to physically move around, and it's very jarring to do that. Now look at the difference when I put this back in. It's a whole new world. It's much easier to be clear, right? Okay, so what is the last difference that we have to look at? It's how we actually call the draw cam views. So before, all we had was one single draw cam view, and we passed in the cam variable. Now what we need to do is we basically need to tell it which viewport to use every time we call that. So we're saying, hey, set the graphics device viewport equal to the player 1's camera. Now draw the player 1. Now set the viewport to the player 2's camera. Okay, now draw that camera. Okay, now set it back to the default view so we can draw the HUD on top of the glass. So player 1, player 2, HUD stuff. And that's the whole shebang. Now we can add more cameras if we'd like. You could use cameras when it comes to multiple views. You could use this for so many different applications. Maybe that is like a rear view mirror in a racing game. Maybe you're making a game that has like security cameras, and each security camera is a view into some other part of the game world. So you have all these different viewports right there that you can actually use, and they're live, they're real. And then you could obviously use it for what we're talking about here, which is split screens. 1 player, 2 player, 4 player, 16 player, whatever you want. Just remember, the more cameras you put in, the more costly it is in terms of processing. So that's it for multiple viewports and split screens. If you have any questions, make sure you talk to your teacher. That's it for now. Good luck and have fun.